Welcome to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
Cory Sandhagen, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Cory, we always like to start these chats by just kind of taking you way back to where it all began, really, and asking you where you grew up and if it was like an area where you had to deal with confrontation a lot.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. So I grew up in Aurora, Colorado. It's like just a suburb kind of right outside of Denver, Colorado. And I was born and raised here, so I know you guys are from London, so you guys probably don't know what's
really
going on in Colorado, but so Denver is becoming like a super popular city probably in the last like 12 years or so. So Denver and Aurora were just kind of like Midwest, like mountain towns, where people kind of just came to vacation to go to Vail and stuff. But no, now it's like completely blown up. But I come from like the old Colorado. Like I'm one of the like few locals that are left here. So yeah, so I grew up there. Was there a lot of confrontation? It definitely wasn't like a super smooth area that I grew up in. Like Aurora is kind of known for being like a little bit more on the rugged side. It's by no means like a ghetto or anything like that. There's definitely some rough areas, and there's definitely a lot of different types of people, and there's definitely like their fair share of gangs growing up and stuff like that. So while I wasn't like a full part of that, I definitely saw like a decent amount of that growing up.
And how did you respond to that? Like, was that easy for you to deal with if confrontation ever arose? Were you someone that was like very comfortable in that scenario?
No, I was passive, man. I grew up like really small, dude. Like I was supposed to be. The doctor told me my whole life I was gonna be like 5'2" or something, because I have a really short Irish mom, and then kind of like a little dad too. So I thought I was gonna be really small. So I never got into any confrontations because it would have ended in me getting my ass whooped. And the few that I did get in, it did end up with me usually getting my ass whooped. So no, but I hung out with actually I had a friend, Marquise, who I grew up with, who I'm still really good friends with, who was like my protector. He was just like this giant guy, and he was just my protector. He fought all the fights for me because I was just tiny.
And so how did you end up getting involved in martial arts?
Yeah, so I grew up playing basketball also, and basketball was just kind of fizzling out. Basketball and wrestling were during the same season, so I never really got to experience the whole route of wrestling going into MMA. Like I didn't do all that. I played basketball. I was a pretty athletic kid. I played a lot of other sports too, and so yeah, so I kind of just got sick of basketball. Signed up at I don't know if you guys know Nate Marquardt. He's kind of an old school MMA guy. Yeah, so Nate had a gym in Aurora, so I just looked it up after I think seeing Nate on TV, and just signed up at the gym. And I was about 17 years old, so I kind of got a little bit of a late start, but I shit you not, probably since I was 17 years old, I've been, like I was at the gym like twice a day for pretty much my entire life since then. So
being really sort of sporty, you listed basketball and other sports that, you was enjoying and that. Did you find just having a kind of being quite, into, athletics as such, did you find that fighting come relatively easy? How did you find it, initially in the gym? Was it something that felt natural and comfortable?
Yeah, I was good. I was like, I definitely had like a lot of natural talent. I've seen a lot of natural talent like not go the way that it's gone for me too, but yeah, I can speak on. I was pretty, well off like right off the bat. I think I did like a tournament in jiu-jitsu only about like 2 weeks into, having training, and I think I got like second place. And I remember going home and telling my parents, and they were like, "Ah, shit, this guy's good at this. Like he's he's not gonna stop." So because they weren't into it at first, they were like, "That's weird. Like you want to fight? Like that's weird, like most people." But no, I was pretty naturally good right off the bat, so that made it easier to enjoy and to love. So
What do your parents do for a living, or what did they do for a living?
So my mom worked for the post office, and then my dad was like a postal inspector. So he was like I think technically he's like a FBI agent, but my dad just like caught people that were stealing money is pretty much what he did.
So did they ever go like, well, you just said they were quite shocked, but like, did they ever look now and go, God, he's like earning good money and he's like fighting for world titles? It's like, is this our son? Like, is this like, you know?
I see it in my mom's eyes, man. She can't believe it every time, you know, like especially when I think about who my parents actually are too. So my mom was born and raised in Queens, New York, from my grandma and grandfather that moved here from Ireland. So she grew up in Queens, New York, very poor. And then my dad grew up on a farm, also very poor. So I can just like imagine in their heads what it probably looks like to see their son on TV and like doing a really good job. And they're like, oh shit, like our son's, you know, like a little bit of a somebody, you know? So yeah, that's kind of cool. But yeah, they're kind of weird probably from their perspective for sure. But my mom loves it, dude. Like my mom is super into it. So it's fun.
Can I ask you about sort of confidence and your relationship with it, Cory? And I want to ask you about your first ever fight in the octagon. You know how that was for you, and was there nerves? And tell us about fighting now. You know, are there still nerves? And if so, how do you sort of control that?
Yeah. So this whole martial arts journey for me has been like a really deep dive into trying to make myself as fearless as possible in life, and then also in the cage too. There's a lot of overlap there. So man, I used to get so scared before fighting. Like I used to get so scared. Like I used to wake up in the middle of the night just to go to the restroom and then not be able to sleep. I used to get extremely nervous just being around my opponent at weigh-ins. I used to be extremely nervous that I would miss weight. Just like all kinds of like obsessive type of thoughts, you know, like I'm a little bit of that type of thinker, you know, like my dad was a really not super neurotic, but my dad was kind of a neurotic guy. So I kind of got a little bit of that pitched off on me. But man, I used to get so nervous. So I knew that I didn't want that to be my entire experience in the sport because it was just going to be shitty and unenjoyable just with the amount of nerves that came with it. And so I started seeing a sports psych after I kind of lost my first fight as a professional. And he helped me like a ton, kind of like battle a lot of those nerves, kind of like one thing that I really enjoy doing when I start to get nervous about an outcome or anything is I'll follow that nerve like all the way down the rabbit hole to where it ends. And like usually it doesn't really end in like that bad of a spot. You know, it's like, all right, well, what if I get knocked out in this next fight in September on the 17th? It's like you get knocked out, man. And then like every other day of your life is the exact same. And you're probably going to wake up and do the exact same thing. So a lot of like me battling nerves is like following it all the way down the rabbit hole. But no, man, like I'm actually super proud of myself and the people that I've been able to surround myself with, where I've been able to like really like attack that, man. Like what a blessing that is for like someone in their life to like have to deal with that much fear and then like come out on the other end, man. Cause now I'm a pretty fearless guy as far as like competing and fighting goes. And I think that that's why I'm able to fight the way that I am.
One of the things that I've heard you talk about is that you do a lot of self-hypnosis. And is that something, Cory, that you do for relaxation, or is it something that you do to plant, you know, anchor points into your subconscious? And like, you know, what do you use it for?
Yeah, so I use it for a lot of reasons. Yeah, for both of those, I suppose. So there's like a lot of different terminologies or whatever, but sometimes I do need to meditate. Like I use the word meditate as like as a word to relax myself, and then I kind of use hypnosis as to like how to touch into that kind of subconscious stuff that I have going on deep inside me. So I mean, man, I do a meditation every morning for like 30 minutes where I just try to completely just like make nothing happen in my brain, you know. And those are always really relaxing as long as I do them in the correct way and I'm not too forceful about it. But I'll do those types of meditations. And then as I start to get into camp, I'll add in visualizations twice a week too, where I'm walking myself through the fight, like everything from weighing in, seeing them, all the way to the bus ride over, all the way to the way that it feels afterwards, all the way to, you know, when I FaceTime my family or go see my family after I win. And I'll do those visualizations. But my favorite ones are definitely those hypnosis ones where, um, you know, I don't want to sound too weird or whatever, because I understand that I'm kind
fascinating.
of weird. Yeah, I see the world a little bit differently than I think a lot of people do. But I'll like go really deep into like those self-hypnosises, and there's a lot of really good ones on YouTube that I'll do if I feel like I can't get myself there because I don't have the energy. But man, I'll go in there and I'll almost have like lucid dreams where I'm definitely still awake, like, but I don't really have a ton of control of what's happening in the dream. I just have to kind of like sit there and watch it. And those are always like super, super interesting when I can get into a really deep one of those. But I'll try to do those about once or twice a week. And some of them feel a lot more profound than the other ones. But yeah, I'll do that about twice a week.
Are you finding the more you do it, the deeper you go?
Yeah, definitely. I found that usually it takes about 3 weeks for me to actually be good at visualizing. Or like digging, making it so that there's no noise in the way of the symbols that want to shoot through my brain into what's going on. But yeah, it usually takes about 3 weeks, and then I'm like, all right, now I'm actually good at this, you know. But yeah, 3 weeks is usually where I find that it starts to work.
Yeah.
As someone that's not really ever done that before, in terms of those visualizations, is it you kind of like talking yourself through a series of events? Are you kind of creating a story, as it were, in your head of how you predict things to go, and then just trying to control your brain to not let it kind of go off in different directions, just focus on that story, on the ideal scenario for you to be in the days, hours, minutes, seconds leading up to and after the fight?
Yeah, sometimes. So the ones that are on YouTube, they'll almost like walk you through like this like guided journey, you know, where it's like hey, you're like a lot of the visualizations. So there's a technique in visualization where you kind of start it all the exact same way. So like you're in a house, you go down the stairs, and like with each step you get deeper and deeper into your breath, you get deeper into your mind, and you get deeper and deeper into like the silence of it all. And then when you get to the bottom of the stairs, you're in a basement, and it's the same basement every time. I'll sit on the couch. I'll watch the TV. I'll like imagine like typing in all of the what I'm trying to YouTube. I'll like YouTube my fight, and then I'll like go through the fight as if I'm watching it on TV. Um, and yeah, so I'll do it that way a little bit, and then with like the hypnosis ones, sometimes the ones that are on YouTube are a little bit more like guided, like, hey, you're walking through like a jungle, and then like you look over here and you see this, but it doesn't really tell you what this is, so like your mind creates what this is. But then there's some dude where like, I don't know, man, like the stars maybe line up, or I slept good that night or something, or I didn't get hit good that day at practice or something, where like I can just go so deep into my mind and just see what's really, really happening at like the very like part of me, you know, which are pretty cool. But those are kind of far in between, and I almost feel like those aren't even anything that I can like attribute myself to doing. I feel like they're almost given.
You strike me as a very kind of thoughtful and considerate person. We actually mentioned before we press record that you messaged us to say, sorry, I'm going to be 2 minutes late. And I have to say that a lot of fighters won't even tell you they're going to be half an hour late. That's, you know, so I think you seem like a very thoughtful and considerate person. Is there ever any conflict within you when you're, you know, doing a sport where it is at times a violent sport? And you know, I think of things like the Frankie Edgar knockout in particular, the Marlon Moraes knockout, where, you know, there is a brutality to it. Do you ever have moments where you feel guilty about the fact that they've come off so badly in that fight, or does emotion just have to come completely out of the equation, because obviously they're trying to do the same thing to you, and it's, you know, you're trying to earn a living at the end of the day. So is there any of that kind of conflict within you?
Yeah, I've had those conflicts as well too in life. Almost like the, you know, like a journey of fear. Like I also feel like having like a journey where I'm trying to eliminate as much fear as possible is also the same thing as kind of saying where I'm trying to create a life that's as peaceful as possible. And in that peace, like there's a lot of love and joy and great stuff like that in the piece, but I'm doing like a career where like my job is to like try to destroy another person's body. And like, yeah, man, that's given me like kind of like a decent amount of I've had to like meditate on those types of feelings a lot, but man, uh it is weird. I kind of even don't even really have words for it because I still don't really have it sorted all out in my brain, where it's like I try to be this like peaceful, loving, thoughtful guy who is as little of a douchebag as like I can possibly be given my circumstance growing up. But I definitely run into the issue of like, but you beat the shit out of people for a living. Like what? And I teach other people how to do that. Like
Yeah.
like I teach the kids program at high altitude, and I'm like, I don't know if this feels right or not, man. Like, but it's interesting, but it's also a part of life, man. Like we're animals at the end of the day. We're very capable of loving each other too, but we're animals, and animals like to fight each other, and they have to fight each other. So that's just the way that this human experience is going for me.
One more question on the sort of psychological side of fighting and the positions that you found yourself in, over recent years. I'm in no way, shape or form suggesting, you did not have the right to be in the octagon with all of these, superstar fighters, yourself being one of them. But when you're in them moments and you're looking across the octagon at a Frankie or something like that, do you ever have that imposter syndrome of like, shit, how am I here? This is crazy. I'm in the octagon now at the UFC in like this huge event. Like, did you ever get them sort of moments of imposter syndrome?
No. It's pretty much well, now maybe in the past I did, but now, man, it's like this is 100% me being a destroyer. Like that's my job. This is my job. It's not even, it goes even past my job. Like this is like my life's duty a little bit, where like I'm there to destroy the other person, and it could be a Frankie Edgar, it could be a TJ Dillashaw, it could be whoever, whatever big name it is. Like that's what it is on that night, and I'm not gonna like, that's who I am on that night, 100%.
The bantamweight division is absolutely stacked. I've said on this podcast for a long time, I think it's my favorite division because it has that perfect blend, I feel, of those elite level fighters like yourself, but also the prospects coming through, looking at Ricky Simone and Jack Shaw that are fighting in, I think this week, I think they're fighting Saturday. And also the legends. You've got the legends like Frankie, who you fought, but also people like Dominic Cruz and Jose Aldo. And I was just wondering if the UFC came to you with two contracts, one with Dominic Cruz on it, one with Jose Aldo, and they said, you can only fight one of these guys, and that's it. You can't ever fight the other one. Who's the one that you would want to fight most, Dominic or Jose?
Probably Dominic, only because there's like like I love Aldo too. I think Aldo is like an amazing fighter, but Dominic almost has like a little bit of a specialer place in my life, just because like I learned a lot from watching him initially in the sport. So I think that would just be like cool for me, so yeah, I'd probably go Cruz.
One of the other things ahead of a fight, I'm always interested to know about the face-off, the stare down, and is it all for camera, and is it just to sort of help hype the fight? I'm sure that's a big part of it. But when you stand there face to face, you hear often, fighters say, "I was literally staring right through to their soul." Like, how much of that is true, and what do you take from a stare down?
Yeah, so everyone kind of does that piece a little bit different and values it differently, so like I'm buddies with a guy named Ryan Hall who
We love Ryan Hall.
Love Ryan Hall.
Yeah, me and Ryan train a decent amount together. He's a little hurt right now, but actually not this week, but next week I'm gonna be in Virginia training with him again. But yeah, so Ryan Hall and Ton Lee, who are always out there, or actually last week we were watching some fights and we were watching a stare down, and they were just like making fun of how intense the stare down people were, and I was like, I'm one of those people that takes it really intensely, you know, like you have to remember that, okay, so this is what fight week looks like. Everyone shows up on Tuesday usually. We all have to do our media and everything on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we all have to cut weight on Friday. We're all staying at the same hotels. We're all going to the exact same places, and we're all like doing the exact same thing, and we're less than like probably 500 feet from each other the whole time. So I look at these things like they're like ancient battles, man. Like they're like a sacred thing to me a little bit, where it's like, no, this isn't just like some showmany like entertainment type of thing where I know that like people get off on being entertainers and stuff. I don't. Like, I get off on being a killer. Like, I get off on being like that destroyer guy. And so any opportunity I get to like, you know, have a little bit of edge in the fight, like I take that opportunity. And if that means like staring at the guy really intensely and he thinks it's silly, then fine. Like, he can think it's silly, but I take those moments really serious. But everyone kind of does it different. Like, a lot of fighters be like, "You're an idiot, man. Like, you're wasting energy." It's like, it's 24 hours before. What are you doing? But I take them as opportunities.
Yeah.
You've got a degree in psychology as well, right?
Yeah. If I was a psych
Does
major,
that
I'd see.
does that come into play at all? Are you that degree in psychology? Are you able to kind of maybe like get something from them and be able to read their body language or what they say in interviews or anything like that that kind of helps you go, oh, I think I know where this fighter's at mentally, because you've got more of an understanding of that kind of thing than someone that maybe doesn't have a psychology degree.
Yeah, I don't know that the psychology. I think that that's just been an interest for me my entire life. I was always interested in like, because like I said, in Aurora, there's a lot of different types of people, you know. And so it always interested me like, oh, why are my friends this way and I'm this way? There's just like a lot of cultures happening at the same time where I kind of grow up. So that has always interested me. It's like, oh, so the way that you're raised like really impacts the way that you are. So that was always kind of just like a interest that I always had. And uh, what was the initial question again? Where am I going with this?
Well, just if the psychology degree is in any way beneficial for you in face-offs or watching the other fighters be interviewed or anything.
Yeah. So that's another thing too that I take into consideration also is like, I personally do watch. Like, I watch interviews. I watch like I just watch their demeanors. I watch how their character. I try to listen to the words that they say. I try to like hear their values, just so I can get like a really good breakdown of who they actually are. Because what I've learned most in this sport, or not most, but one of the things that I've really taken from this sport is like, everyone is saying that they want to be champion, but a lot of people aren't acting and talking and doing things that are actually like things that are going to make them a champion. And I think people like reveal a lot of things about in their words, you know, like people will reveal what they're afraid of based off of what they're talking about, you know, like, so if someone starts unpromptedly talking about how they're not afraid of getting tired, it's like, you must have spent a decent amount of time rehearsing on your car ride over to training how you're not going to get tired on that day, you know, like that must be one of your demons that you have to struggle with. So I watch out for like a lot of unprompted things, and that kind of gives me a little bit of tell into like what they're afraid of, because if I can make them super afraid while they're in the cage, then that's definitely a good thing. But yeah, it's kind of funny how like people just start spewing out like all kinds of revealing shit just because like someone asks them. You know, it's like, dude, this is gonna be on like your opponents are gonna be able to watch this. Don't be stupid, you know. But not a lot of guys think like that.
One of the other things that we always like to ask guests as well is, what's your, when you're in that room at the event and they're about to call your name and it's time to go out and walk into the octagon? I mean, that is an insane scenario for most people to put their place, you know, put themselves in that place. What's your sort of little routine before you walk out when you're in that room in the sort of like the 15-30 minutes before you walk out? What do you do? How do you stay calm? How do you stay focused? What's the sort of routine, Cory?
So I'm a pacer guy. I like pace around a lot. Uh, it all depends, man. So I had that fight against Sterling, as you guys know, where I just like it was like a horrible performance. I did horribly, and it was because I wasn't being as up and as intense as I should have been for an occasion like that. And I kind of left it up to chance whether or not I was going to have intensity or not have intensity. And I got away with that for a really long time because even on the days where I didn't feel like fighting or I didn't feel like being intense, I would still typically win. So it was just a problem that went unresolved because as men, I think included, like men don't really talk about like, oh man, like I kind of felt like really bad before that fight, like that was just something that you just don't really talk about sometimes being a man. So uh, if I got away with it, it just went unresolved. And then I had that obviously happen where I just had a horrible performance, lost on when, I definitely feel like I should have won and performed a lot better. And and it was because I just like didn't have that intensity. So I had to address that intensity. And now uh, you'd be really surprised as to uh, how capable you can make yourself and your mind and your body of something by doing little exercises that will make you more intense. So one of them that I use is like I do a lot of like breathing exercises if I need to bring myself to a more intense place or a more focused place. And sometimes if it needs to go in the other direction where I need to be a little bit more calm, then I'll use breathing exercises for that. Sometimes I have to like tap into affirmations where, like you'll tell yourself you're the best, you're this, you're that, like you've all seen the videos of people doing that too. Occasionally I have to do that, but now I'm at like kind of a smooth time where like I can get myself to a very intense place without too much thought happening. And I think that that's kind of the way to do it because the less thinking that's going on, I believe the better you'll perform for the most part. So yeah, so it's just a lot of me pacing around after I get warmed up, and being super intense. I'll yell a lot, because it's in me. Like I've gotten to a good place where I can get myself to a super high level of intensity, and that's helped me a lot in the last, since that Sterling fight.
Are you difficult to be around in those moments? Because I think we spoke to Michael Bisping a while ago, and I think he said, "Oh, I can be a bit of a dick at the times like before fighting." Are you difficult to be around in those moments? Do you think?
Mildly. I kind of, when I start being a dick, I know that it's coming from like stress, and so I just tell myself like, dude, being a pussy, like quit being a pussy. Because usually that's like irritability and things like that are just because you're afraid of something or you're stressed or something, So if I start to feel myself go down that path, like I don't ever want to be that guy, dude. There's guys that like are huge assholes before their fights, and like during their weight cuts they just turn into huge Nancy's, and like I never want to be one of those guys at any point, whether or not I have the excuse to do it or not. So no, not really, to be honest. Like I'm still pretty considerate and stuff. Like I'll still say please, thank you, all of that stuff, but that's only because if I was being irritable and like not doing those things, that would be like a red flag for me to be like, oh, like stop thinking or whatever it is that's happening in your brain that's creating this like overfilled cup where you can't even say please and thank you at this point, like that to me is just a sign of like high stress.
You touched on something. You said I think it was either in the lead up or post the Sterling fight. You said you knew you weren't switched on as such, and you didn't really have them conversations man to man with somebody else. Post that, is that something that you've looked at? Do you because so much of what we hear from talking to fighters is the mental stress of competing at this level is ridiculous, and obviously as an outsider looking in, you'd imagine these gyms with all of these kind of fighters that testosterone's there, and is it something where is that changing where you can feel more comfortable having open conversations about your mental health? In 2022, is it feeling like something that you're more comfortable talking to other guys in the gym about how you're feeling, and do you see that's changing in the sport at all?
Yeah, I would say that it is. I think it is a super stressful sport, man, and but that's also like the most beautiful part of it, because you wouldn't be able to conquer fear if you didn't have to go through it all the time. I've spent so much time of my life like just stressed and worried about winning fights. Like so much of my life has been on that, and I feel like once I kind of like let that go is when I started performing really, really good. um so like it is a super stressful life, but it's not worth bitching about, because it's the thing that like gets you, it makes you the man that you're going to be once you're done fighting, and it makes your soul, like super strong. It makes those around you super strong. It makes like the kids that I hopefully will have one day, it will make them super strong, just because I've had to deal with all of it and I've had to do all of it. So um yeah, that's definitely the case. It is a super stressful thing, but that stress is a blessing big time, man. And so I'm at like a good place with all my fears.
Good.
One thing I really wanted to touch on outside of the octagon was you mentioned in previous interviews, but I've not seen you go into it too much, and you absolutely don't have to, obviously. But you mentioned working with kids with trauma previously, and I just wanted to know, like, can you tell us exactly what your job was, and without going into too much detail, maybe what kind of trauma we're talking about with these kids, and if the experience of working there changed you in any way?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I started working at a place called Mount St. Vincent's, which is just like a really awesome nonprofit that works with traumatized kids. Usually they were like, from about like 6 to 13 was like our age group. And most of my job towards the latter end, because I was still doing it when I was in the UFC, because I was able to make my own hours and they were always really cool. So towards the latter part of that, like, I guess, job that I had, I was working in the school where I was kind of like an assistant teacher for a lot of those kids. A lot of them come from backgrounds of some type of abuse or neglect, so like sexual or physical abuse, or like neglect or some type of or it could have been trauma a little bit later in their life. It could have been, trauma affects you very differently depending on when it happens, whether you're a baby, whether you're 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, so I started doing that. The main reason that I got into that is because before I got into the UFC, obviously you're like, oh man, if this, like I need to kind of have something sustainable a little bit, so that you're not just, you know, living at home until you make it to the UFC, because who knows when that's going to happen. So that was kind of the reason for doing that. I had always been really interested in social work. That's kind of why I went to school for psychology too. I grew up with like a lot of poor friends, and it was kind of like my way of giving back to those poor friends, because I kind of grew up not in like I wasn't I by no means came from like a wealthy household, but I was a lot better off than like a lot of the friends that I had in my life. So that was kind of like, I think, the reason that I wanted to do types of social work like that. But no, that job, I think it did change me. It was like my first time really experiencing like human evil at like that type of level, which was interesting. Um, so that kind of like changed my worldview a little bit. It kind of like made me a humbler guy. I think I had always kind of had like a humble nature, but when you're around people that had those types of circumstances, or you're around people that, like elderly people, people that are sick and going to die, like all of those things really zoom you out of whatever, position you feel like is so horrible in your life. And so, yeah, so I've learned a lot, but it also just kind of like made my worldview a lot more grateful, which is always a good thing.
You seem to have a great perspective on that, and in terms of just perspective in general, you seem to have dealt with any of the down moments in your career. You seem to have dealt with them incredibly well, and you seem to have a great perspective. And as you were saying earlier, what's the worst that can happen? I get knocked out, I'll still be doing the same things I'll be doing a few days later anyway. Do you think you would have had that mindset had you not done that job?
Maybe, I don't know how this whole thing works, man, with like
None of us do.
I know, man. It feels on my end like it's been beautifully orchestrated.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not like a religious guy, you know, but I do have some religious beliefs, and I think that like one of them is that as long as you're being like true to who you are, and you're doing, you know, and you're doing kind of the right thing, then like the right stuff is going to pop up for you. And if that means that I become a champion, then that means I become a champion. And if it doesn't, I'm going to try my damnedest to make that true and make that as real as I can. And like I said, it almost feels like it's not up to me. So I kind of just let that stress off my shoulders a little bit just by, you know, having those types of beliefs.
Absolutely. We're aware that we're quite short on time, so we've got a few sort of fun questions just to finish on, if that's all right with you, Cory. We always like to ask fighters, post fight, what's your go-to food?
Yeah. Honestly, okay, so that night I usually can't eat because my stomach is full of adrenaline anyways. But it's usually like pizza, dude. Something simple. Pizza. Once I start eating sweets, I usually cannot stop eating sweets until I go to bed. So that's just kind of like a shit show from whenever I decide to start that until I decide to fall asleep. But yeah, I'm kind of like an ice cream guy. I'm getting a little into cookies now. But yeah,
You're getting a little into cookies now. Like most people got a little into cookies when they were like 2 or 3 years old.
Returning to the cookies a little bit. I'm not a big pastries guy. I don't, you know, like donuts are all right, but nah, I'm an ice cream guy, and like I don't like gummies, dude. Like people that eat gummies to me are just disturbed, you know. I'm, I'm like a chocolate ice cream guy, and anything outside of that I think is weird.
I want to ask you quickly, who's exciting you in the UFC at the moment? What fighters are coming through that you're excited to watch?
Oh man, I was just in Vegas last weekend, and I got to watch Volkanovski and Izzy fight live.
Oh.
So yeah, so
Volk was special, wasn't he?
God, man, both of them are amazing, but yeah, Volk. You just get like this aura about him where it's just like, oh yeah, no one's touching him for a while. You know, like
Yeah.
that guy has made himself super unbeatable. So he's really inspiring me. So yeah, Volkanovski is on the top of the list right now.
Wonderful.
Well, look, we'd be remiss not to mention your upcoming fight against Song Yadong. I think you briefly mentioned it earlier. I think it's in September.
Yeah, September 17th.
September 17th. He's on a 3-fight win streak, 2 wins by KO recently. But he's yet to fight anyone of your level yet. What are the kind of attributes he has, I guess, that you feel like you need to be careful of? And what is it that you think you have that ultimately wins you the fight?
Yeah, so Song's kind of that like I mean it almost seems like there's two body types in the UFC. There's like lanky like me, or there's that like little wrestler stocky type of build. And Song has that, but he didn't grow up wrestling, so um I don't have like too many thoughts on Song quite yet. I haven't started my training camp, so I've kind of just been like keeping at a baseline amount of training. And I haven't watched too much film on him. I've watched a few of his fights, but he's gonna be like a super powerful hitter. He's like 24 years old, so he's gonna make 24-year-old decisions. I think. Even though he does have a decent amount of fights, I think that there's something that happens as you get older in your decision making abilities. So I think that will probably be a weakness of his in this one. But he's athletic as hell, you know, like you put any type of athlete in front of anyone and they're going to be tough as hell to beat. So it'll be a challenging fight. And yeah, that's what it'll be.
I have to ask you one more thing, because you mentioned being lanky. I'm lanky, and I always wanted to know, are weight cuts harder for lanky people? Because there's not much to lose. Like I look at myself and I think, where would I lose the weight? Like, is it hard for you? Do you basically walk around at not too dissimilar a weight to what you fight at? Because I just look and I go, where do you lose the weight? The big muscular guys or the heavier set guys, you go, oh, I can see where that weight's getting lost from. But I look at some fighters like yourself or like a Sean O'Malley or an Israel Adesanya, and I'm like, where are you losing this weight?
Yeah, I don't know. No, weight cuts are pretty easy for me, man. I'm actually really good at sweating. I sweat pretty good. I sweat like a pound every 10 minutes, which is pretty good. So if I have to cut like, 8 that day, then that's like a easy, a little bit over an hour. So no, I sweat good, man. I don't really know how that works like genetically. But I might not be the strongest guy in the world, but I guess I think I still have like a little bit of muscle. I think it's kind of like okay, this is my like stupid, unexperienced doctor.
That's where we excel. Stupid and
Yeah.
unexperienced is where we excel.
We
So
love a bit
please,
of guesswork.
bring it in. Yeah. Conjecture all day long. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm big on hypothesis. I'll say a hypothesis like it's true, but so there's like a layer of muscle and then there's a layer of fat, and I think that the less fat that you have, because water gets stored in muscle, the less fat that you have in between that layer of skin, I think makes it a lot easier to cut weight, because I've kind of noticed the guys that are a little bit not fat by any means, but have like a little bit of a layer of fat on them. I think that water has to like coast through that fat line, and I think that's like not super easy for the body to do. But like I said, that's just my dumb ass saying that, so that's probably not true at all. But yeah, I don't know how that works. But I sweat great. My weight cuts are super easy.
Brilliant.
Wonderful.
Man, I feel like I could chat to you all day, mate. This has been a really fun and lovely chat, and we know you've got to get on, so we'll let you go. But best of luck for September 17th against Song Yadong. And yeah, I just have to say I've been a big fan of you for a very, very long time. I mean, in the cage, I think you are incredibly fun to watch, and outside the cage, you just seem like a real stand-up guy and someone that I would want to back always. So thanks very much, Cory, and thanks for your time today. Yeah,
cool. Thank you guys. Yeah, I enjoyed the interview. I was worried that this interview was going to be a bunch of questions about songs. So yeah, I enjoy talking about all the things that you guys asked me about. So thank you.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Anytime.
Thanks loads, Cory. Best of luck.